It's hard to believe that a little girl born over 150 years ago could still inspire us today. But Marie Curie was no ordinary girl. In 1867, Maria Sklodowska was born in Warsaw, Poland, where her father was a professor of physics and her mother was a teacher. It was unusual for women to go to university at this time, but from a young age, Marie showed just how passionate she was about learning. She would sit for hours reading her father's science books, and she excelled at school, winning a scholarship to the prestigious Sorbonne University in Paris. But there was a problem. Marie's family were very poor, and it cost a lot of money to study in Paris. So instead of going straight to university, Marie worked as a governess, looking after the children of a wealthy family whilst saving up enough money to study. For 7 years, she worked tirelessly, sending most of her wages back home to help support her family. Finally, she had saved enough, and in 1891, aged just 24, she began studying at the Sorbonne. But sadly, her mother died shortly after Marie arrived in Paris, and she was too poor to return home for the funeral. Despite this huge personal loss, Marie threw herself into her studies and began conducting research alongside her physics professor, discovering some new properties of crystals. However, when her scholarship was due to be renewed, she was rejected because she was a woman. But this didn't stop Marie. She simply switched departments and began studying chemistry instead. Here, she met a man called Pierre Curie who would change her life. Pierre was a poor student like Marie, and they bonded over their shared love of science and their difficult financial situation. They married in 1895 and moved into a small apartment together. Life was tough and they struggled to pay for food, but they were excited to be starting their own little family, and they dreamed of one day having children. Sadly, this wasn't to be. Whilst at university, Marie had been working in a lab alongside a professor. Together they were investigating the link between magnetism and fluorescence, which is when a material absorbs light and then emits it as a different color. One day, whilst experimenting, they discovered that a mysterious element they had found was emitting a strange glow. At first they thought this might be radium, but they soon realized they had discovered a completely new element, which they named polonium, after Marie's home country of Poland. This discovery made them famous around the world. Together, Marie and Pierre Curie were about to change the world with their discoveries. But how did they do it, and what did they discover next? After all, we now have hospitals that use X-ray machines every day, and these were invented by Marie and Pierre. And even more amazingly, chemotherapy drugs are often made radioactive, which is a legacy of the Curie's work. Paris, 1898. A cramped, dimly lit basement room, cluttered with makeshift lab equipment and glowing with an eerie green light. Marie Sklodowska Curie, a young Polish scientist, is bent over a microscope, carefully examining a tiny crystal of pitchblende, a mineral from the Czech Republic. For months, she and her husband, Pierre Curie, have been tirelessly working to isolate two mysterious elements they believe are hiding within its structure. They had already discovered one, a highly radioactive element they named polonium after Marie's homeland, Poland. But the other element remained elusive, defying their efforts to extract it. Yet Marie's determination does not waver. She continues to analyze samples day and night, driven by an insatiable curiosity and a desire to unlock the secrets of the universe. Her husband, Pierre, enters the room and sees Marie bent over her microscope. Her face is illuminated by the eerie glow of the screen, highlighting the intense focus and determination on her features. Despite the cramped conditions and the countless hours they've spent hunched over their lab benches, Pierre feels a surge of admiration for his wife. He knows that together they are on the verge of something truly special, something that will change the world. Suddenly, Marie looks up, her eyes shining with excitement. She holds up a tiny vial containing a clear, colorless liquid. "Pierre, I think we did it," she says, her voice trembling with emotion. "I think we've found it." Together, they examine the liquid under the microscope. The tiny crystal of pitchblende has yielded its secrets, and Marie and Pierre Curie have just discovered radium. Over the next few years, the Curies would continue to study radium and other radioactive elements, making groundbreaking discoveries that would revolutionize our understanding of the atom and the forces that hold it together. But this is not the end of their story. In 1903, Marie and Pierre Curie would be awarded the Nobel Prize in Physics, along with Henri Becquerel, for their work on radioactivity. This was the first time a woman had ever won a Nobel Prize. Yet despite this incredible achievement, the Curie's work was far from over. Tragedy would strike when Pierre was killed in a tragic accident, leaving Marie a widow with 2 young daughters to support. But she would not allow this setback to slow her down. With the support of her sister, Bronislawa, Marie would continue her research and make even more groundbreaking discoveries. In 1911, she would win her second Nobel Prize, this time in chemistry, for the discovery of radium and polonium. She became the first person in history to win 2 Nobel Prizes. Throughout their lives, Marie and Pierre Curie had to overcome many obstacles to succeed. When they began their research on radioactivity, the scientific community was largely dismissive of their work. Many scientists believed that radioactivity was a fluke, or that it was somehow dangerous. But the Curies persisted, driven by their belief that they were on the verge of a major discovery. They worked tirelessly in their cramped basement lab, often spending 12 hours a day or more hunched over their microscopes and test tubes. Despite the dim oil lamp lighting their workspace, they managed to make some of the most important discoveries in the history of science. But it was not just the scientific community that was skeptical of the Curie's work. As a married couple, they also had to contend with the social norms of the time. Women were expected to be wives and mothers, not scientists. But Marie and Pierre supported each other's work and refused to let societal expectations hold them back. In fact, their partnership was a true collaboration. Both Marie and Pierre were brilliant scientists in their own right, and they worked together to make their discoveries. They shared ideas, conducted experiments, and analyzed data together. Their teamwork was a key factor in their success. Tragedy struck in 1906 when Pierre was killed in a horse-drawn carriage accident. This was a devastating blow to Marie, not only because she had lost her beloved husband and partner, but also because she was left to care for their 2 young daughters alone. However, she refused to give up. With the help of her sister, Bronislawa, who came to live with her and the children, Marie was able to continue her work. She was appointed to Pierre's chair at the Sorbonne, becoming the first woman to hold a full professorship there. Despite the sexism and skepticism she faced, Marie's work continued to make waves in the scientific community. In 1911, she was awarded the Nobel Prize in Chemistry for her discovery of radium and polonium. She was the first person to win 2 Nobel Prizes, and her work paved the way for countless other scientists. But it was not just her scientific achievements that made Marie Curie a trailblazer. She was also a pioneer for women in science. At a time when women were still fighting for the right to vote in many countries, Marie was breaking down barriers and showing the world what women were capable of. She was a role model for generations of female scientists, and her legacy continues to inspire today. The discovery of radium and polonium opened up a whole new world of possibilities in physics and medicine. Radium was used in the first X-ray machines, which allowed doctors to see inside the human body without invasive surgery. It was also used in the first cancer treatments, which gave hope to millions of patients who had previously had no chance of survival. Polonium, meanwhile, was used in nuclear reactors and in the development of nuclear weapons. The uses of these elements and the study of radioactivity more generally have had a profound impact on our world. Marie and Pierre Curie's work also had a profound impact on the scientific community itself. Their discovery of radium and polonium led to a complete re-evaluation of the nature of the atom. Scientists had previously believed that atoms were the smallest possible particles in the universe, but the Curie's work showed that atoms were made up of smaller parts. This discovery led to the development of nuclear physics and the study of subatomic particles. It also led to the development of new theories about the nature of matter and energy, which have had a profound impact on our understanding of the universe. Despite all their achievements, Marie and Pierre Curie were not without their critics. Some scientists were skeptical of their work on radioactivity, believing it to be a fluke or dangerous. Others were envious of their success and tried to undermine their work. But the Curies did not let the naysayers get to them. They knew that they were on the verge of making some of the most important discoveries in the history of science, and they were not going to let anything stand in their way. Perhaps the greatest challenge the Curies faced was the lack of resources. They had to make do with whatever materials they could find, often working with makeshift equipment in cramped, poorly ventilated labs, but they were undeterred. With sheer determination and ingenuity, they were able to make some of the most important discoveries in the history of science. As the Curie's work became more well known, they began to receive invitations to speak at conferences and universities around the world. They traveled extensively, giving lectures and meeting with other scientists. But no matter where they went, they always returned to their lab, where they continued their research on radioactivity. In the end, it was this dedication to their work that led to the Curie's greatest triumph. In 1903, Marie and Pierre Curie were awarded the Nobel Prize in Physics for their work on radioactivity, along with Henri Becquerel. This was the first time a woman had ever won a Nobel Prize, and it was a testament to the Curie's hard work and dedication. Just a few years later, in 1911, Marie Curie would win her second Nobel Prize, this time in chemistry, for her discovery of radium and polonium. She was the first person in history to win 2 Nobel Prizes. But perhaps more importantly, the Curie's work had a profound impact on our understanding of the atom and the forces that hold it together. They showed that atoms are made up of smaller parts and that they can be split and transformed into other elements. This discovery led to the development of nuclear physics and the study of subatomic particles. It also led to the development of new theories about the nature of matter and energy, which have had a profound impact on our understanding of the universe. Despite all the challenges they faced, Marie and Pierre Curie never gave up on their work. They were driven by a deep curiosity about the world and a desire to understand the fundamental laws of nature. So what happens next? What challenges will Marie Curie face after winning her second Nobel Prize? The world knows Marie Curie as the pioneer of radioactivity, the first woman to win a Nobel Prize, the only person to win Nobel Prizes in two different scientific fields, and the only person to have their name immortalized twice in the title of a best-selling book. But what many people don't know is the story of her greatness during World War I, and it was during this time that she truly earned the title of the Queen of Science. When war broke out in Europe in August 1914, Marie Curie immediately began thinking about how she could help. Her son Yves said, from then until the end of her life, "My mother never spoke of anything else." At the time, she and her husband were working in their laboratory at the Sorbonne in Paris, where they had been since leaving Poland 8 years earlier. Their work was groundbreaking, having just discovered the elements polonium and radium. But when France found itself under attack, they knew they had to do something. Soon after the start of the war, the couple decided to abandon their work and get involved directly. With no hesitation, they packed up some food and left Paris by train for a small village south of the city where they could be of more help. When they arrived, they found that French officials had already established a field hospital. But instead of volunteering there, Marie and Pierre decided to go further to a military hospital in a small town called Val de Grace. It was here that they saw the most wounded soldiers, many suffering from gunshot wounds, others missing entire limbs. Some of them would die, while others would live, but bear the physical and mental scars of war for the rest of their lives. It soon became apparent to the Curies that while the hospital had surgeons, nurses, and beds, it lacked one thing: X-ray machines to determine the extent of the damage inside the body without harming the patient any further. While these machines had been around for over a decade, they were bulky, expensive, rare, and not very portable, so the military hospital didn't have one. And since the war was raging outside, it wasn't like they could set up an appointment to get one delivered either. Knowing this, the Curies hatched a plan to bring X-ray technology right to the patients. In her own words, they wanted to establish a mobile X-ray service, an X-ray wagon which could be carried on the different fighting fronts, which would enable us to take the X-ray apparatus close up to the guns alongside our soldiers. In the thick of the battle, but it would take more than just enthusiasm to make this idea a reality. They needed funding. Luckily for them, Marie had made quite the name for herself in the scientific community, thanks to her groundbreaking research into radioactivity. As such, she was able to convince several wealthy associates to donate enough money to buy and modify a car and a trailer to serve as the first mobile X-ray unit. The vehicle was equipped with a generator, an X-ray machine, darkroom, changing room, storage space for films, and all the supplies needed to keep the unit running. It also included furniture for a small office where patients could be briefed before and after their procedure. To make sure it could be easily transported, they put everything on wheels so the unit could be broken down and moved quickly. But the Curies knew that building the vehicle alone wouldn't be enough. They also needed to train a team of drivers and technicians who could operate the equipment. Luckily, Marie's daughter, Irene, was studying physics and eager to help her parents during the war. So she and her mother set up classes for military personnel, teaching them how to use the newfangled X-ray machine. While training courses were being held, another problem arose. No one was willing to drive the X-ray unit into dangerous battle zones. Even if they did, no one was sure if the generators would work properly in the field. So the Curies decided to hit the road themselves, driving through bombed-out towns and villages, setting up shop wherever they could find enough flat ground, and treating as many soldiers as possible. When they weren't on the road, the Curies would stay at the local hotels, which were often fully booked with other military personnel. So to make room for them, Marie would register as a lieutenant, while Pierre stayed as a civilian. It was tough work, often taking 12 to 14 hours each day, but it was also rewarding work, saving countless lives and limbs. In fact, a year after the Curies started their mobile X-ray unit, the French government asked them to open a training center to teach others how to do the same work. Marie happily agreed, and the couple helped establish a school that trained 1,600 technicians and 250 doctors. By 1917, however, the strain of the war was beginning to wear on Marie, both physically and emotionally. Her sister had recently died in Poland, and her health was deteriorating due to the effects of radiation poisoning. Despite this, she continued working hard, traveling across France, helping anyone she could. At one point, she and her husband were invited to the French Riviera to treat soldiers stationed there. While they were gone, German forces launched a massive attack, destroying the coastal town and forcing everyone to flee. Luckily, the Curies were warned in time and returned to find their work intact, allowing them to continue their mission. Despite their success, the Curies never forgot that they were volunteers and not official military personnel. They knew that once the war ended, they should return to their previous lives. But the war raged on, and they continued working to save lives until 1918, when peace was finally declared. Over the course of the war, the Curie's mobile X-ray units performed nearly 250,000 examinations. Of those, it's estimated that their work saved 20,000 lives. In the years following the war, the Curies went back to their research, continuing to explore the world of radioactivity. In 1921, Marie won her second Nobel Prize, this time for chemistry, becoming the first person ever to win Nobel Prizes in 2 different scientific fields. That same year, she also became the first woman to teach at the University of Paris. She spent the next 10 years mentoring young scientists, many of whom would go on to win their own Nobel Prizes. Throughout this time, however, Marie's health continued to deteriorate. She had always been very careful when working with radioactive materials, but over the years, her protective gear had become worn and torn. Even worse, she often carried around radium-laced vials in her lab coat pocket, sometimes putting them on her skin to receive extra heat. Eventually, these habits took their toll, and her blood tests revealed that she was suffering from aplastic anemia, a condition in which the bone marrow stops producing enough new blood cells. By 1934, it was clear that Marie's condition would only worsen, and she knew her time was running out. On July 4, 1934, while staying at her family's holiday house in France, she suffered a fatal hemorrhage and died 2 days later, on July 1934. She was buried next to her husband in a cemetery near Paris. Today, Marie's legacy continues to live on. In addition to saving countless lives during World War I, her work changed science forever. Not only did she discover 2 brand new elements, polonium and radium, but she also pioneered the use of X-rays in medical science and trained generations of scientists. The world will never forget the brilliant and courageous woman who left her homeland to help others in need, who drove through war-torn landscapes to save injured soldiers, who gave up her own health to advance scientific knowledge, and who changed the way we understand the world around us. Marie Curie's brilliance, courage, and sacrifice changed science forever. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe to Great Minds and Leaders for more inspiring biographies.